And now we welcome into the show George Hermida, also known as the King of Podcasts, the podcast host of the Broadcasters Podcast, which is a weekly media industry podcast, and the most recently launched Podcasters Row series. And the Podcasters Row is a new series that showcases podcasters talking about various fields and topics about why they do their podcasts and what they're all about. George brings his 30 years of podcast, radio, TV, and newspaper experience to us now at WPHT. I encourage the Zioli Army to go to @King of Podcasts and check it out. You will not be disappointed. But for now, we have the man himself, George Hermida. George, welcome. Thanks for coming back on the show. We appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me back, Lou. Always.
Now, you heard the song. You heard Oliver Anthony. It is, well, I'll let you say it. What is it? It is now...
It's the number one Billboard's Hot 100 chart this week. It's the first time before this artist never had a chart single ever. Not even first time ever heard. And 2 weeks after the song's released, number one on the chart. And by the way, there's 3 country songs now that top the Hot 100. It's just where it is today.
Now, did he release any other songs before? You said he never had a hit, but did he even have any other songs? To my knowledge, he didn't. But did he?
Well, as a matter of fact, there are other songs that got pushed out as well that people might not know about. There's also "Aint Gotta Dollar" and "Time to Get Sober." It's time to get sober. There's a couple of songs that came out, released, and some of those, 2 of the songs, besides Richmond, it was the one that was "It's Time to." It Ain't Got a Dollar also hit the chart, but the one that got the most press was Men North of Richmond.
Now, he released it. It's a video of him strumming his guitar, sitting with his dog. It was a beautiful white German Shepherd in the woods. Yep. Was it professionally recorded, or did he just do it on his own? Was he in a studio? What did he do? Do we know?
I want to say that somebody mastered the recording. I believe it's the one that you see on YouTube. It's the same one. But it was professionally recorded. It's independently produced. This is not part of any major record label or any label for that matter. It was distributed independent. And they did a thing where they went a viral campaign, much like a pop artist. And this song was able to get almost 150,000 units sold, which is like, if you look at physical units today, a Taylor Swift or like a BTS would get 200,000, 250,000 units sold. But that's a lot of units sold and downloaded from iTunes that people went on and bought.
Now,
some streaming that also helped to get the song up there.
I have to say, in my previous life, I was actually engaged to a record executive, and so I knew how all the ins and outs. I knew how you could schmooze program directors to get what they called in those days spins, and obviously there was strict rules because of payola and Alan Freed. Nowadays, kids aren't buying record CDs. I don't even know if they exist anymore. Everything's streaming. Everything's downloads. How are records sold now, George? I don't even know.
I mean, the thing is, you can still promote it. You go through social media. You go different routes. There was a particular country. I don't know if it was a message board, if it was a website, in particular with a lot of followers that really did generate the push to get the song up there. But there were other songs. I want to say it's an album that got out because on the country chart itself, he had 13 songs and they debuted, and Richmond was the one that got the most press. But he had it looks like a full LP that was out there, and hadn't seen anything else. But it's more into the catalog of what he's done. But it was like you never see that long, and all of a sudden this single comes up and people just bought it. The other thing too was the benefit was he pushed an album out, which had that single out there. And because the rules of Billboard are no longer where you have to have a song officially set as a single, that was a thing. That was a rule they got dismissed back in the 90s. And now, like any song, if it gets enough streaming, downloads, or people are listening to it in whichever way or form, or watching it, that's going to make the calculations will make it to go up to the chart. And that's how it did it. But also keep in mind the Jason Aldean song. Try that in a small town. Paved the way for this song to get to this point.
But Jason Aldean is an established artist. He was actually on stage at the Harvest Fest in Las Vegas when the sniper started shooting up amongst the crowd of 20,000 people. I mean, he's a guy who made it already. So this guy is just, he comes literally out of nowhere off the internet. George, I mean, this just an opinion question. You heard the song. We played a minute of it. We wanted to get to you. It's a good song, and he's passionate when he sings it. Rich Men North of Richmond is referring to politicians in D.C. Why do you, I had to cut out the curse words. I had to edit out the curse words. But in your opinion, why do you think this song is resonating? Because I think it's going to cross over. It's not just going to be country, because it's resonating with a lot of people. Of course, it's getting a lot of exposure. It always helps. But the words, working overtime for BS pay and basically how politicians don't care about us. And it's an old soul living in the new world. I mean, everybody, I think, can relate to this song in some way. What do you think?
Well, I could say it does. It's an Americana song. Also, YouTube, there was an account that actually really did push also the song to go up. But you know what? I was reading a story from Billboard, and the music executives there. Look, if you look at the other media that's out there, they're all putting the political charging of how this message came out. That is completely right wing. Okay, but even the artist here, he even said himself that he's not even left or right. Christopher Anthony Lunsford is the real name, and Oliver Anthony, by the way, that's his grandfather's name. So he's using it in tribute to his grandfather to use that name. But
that's nice. See, I didn't even know that. That makes it even nicer. That makes you like him more, paying homage to his grandfather.
Well, it's just, it's the message is powerful. The music executives say that, look, this song might be, the one mainstream song that will break into the crossover and become that one song that everybody knows. But this is a chance for everybody else to check out his catalog. What's happening is the executives admit the music, the structure, the way he put it together, and how the song's structured, where it doesn't feel like it's so politically charged that, people just can't appreciate the message. That they can put their political biases aside. The structure of the song's good. And he's good enough to be another star. They can definitely say he's going to be a big country star, a big Americana star, and people are going to flock to him. And so whatever he puts out there, his musical structure, the way he sings, his instrumentation is good. And the time right now is good as any because of how we're divisive, the devices right now in the country. And country music, for what it is, has become so popular. Morgan Wallen's out there, Jason Aldean, and Luke Combs right now are in that upper echelon of artists that are making songs right now that really resonate. And people are just following along. So he's on the same path of the music, and he just hit it at the right time. Couldn't have been a better time for him to release the song, and it's good. I mean, for the structure, if it was any other political feeling, I mean, it goes along the same sound of any other political songs that are country-based or rock-based or whatever there is. It really has that kind of feeling, and it's for the moment.
With Jason Aldean, Try That in a Small Town, because of the video where it was filmed. I think there was some hangings in front of that building way back in the day. And also the video that he put together, which basically shows, one group of people committing crimes. They tried to paint him as a racist. That didn't work. The song still, it made number one, didn't it?
It did hit number one. It's still in the top 25 right now, and it's still getting sales. But it was really, it was like a groundswell support. Let's get it to number one. But it wasn't any kind of sustained effort, because it did drop 20 points off the very top. But it's still there. People are still streaming it now. And, it's just that what you need to be number one is still sales-driven and radio-driven. So country stations are playing it. People are streaming it, but it's still there. But yeah, the video and then the message behind the video, the fact that the song had already come out before without any kind of traction, and all of a sudden it gets re-released with this video, and then it goes up again. There's a political narrative. There's a political motive by that.
So basically, the overreaction by the left-wing media and liberals in general really what propelled the grassroots effort. Let's get this thing to number one, as you said, but although it made it, it's kind of fabricated, because it's okay, kind of like, that last push-up. You do that last push-up, it's okay, I did it, but it wasn't really a picture-perfect one. So, but the reason I bring up Jason Aldean and Try That in a Small Town is there's no way to paint this as a racist song. There's nothing to criticize it. He's criticizing politicians, and politicians are like lawyers. Actually, most of them are lawyers. They're not exactly endeared to the public on both sides of the aisle now. So there's nothing for the media to criticize. So this is really a natural groundswell, if you will, unlike nothing against the Aldean song, but more fabricated, so to speak.
You know, the thing, too, is that if you check out the guy's backstory, I mean, before he got to this, he was dealing with a lot of issues with mental health, depression, alcohol abuse, and he was trying to find a way back. And he's basically been in recovery. He asked God, specifically, he said it in a Facebook post the last week, talking about that. He wrote the music because he was suffering from all that. And, you know, the song that he wrote, not just Richmond, but the other songs about, you know, mental health, depression, and other things, is, you know, the people just feel the moment. It's that he went through all that. He asked God for help. He broke down and asked for help and asked for his guidance, and that's what brought him back around. That's honestly what he feels like has brought him, like divine providence, for him to go ahead and be able to put these songs out there. So, like, his personal story, people are learning about, and also that attaches the music to him.
And America loves an underdog.
Oh yeah,
and you know, someone who comes back from, I didn't realize that, with the mental health and the alcoholism and all of that kind of stuff. So. But, you know, the left wing in this country, you know, they hate anybody who gives God credit for anything. I mean, so I'm surprised they're not attacking him about that.
Well, because you're really now you're identifying the point where it's who's rich and who's poor, who's the have and have not. And he's speaking to people that don't have. And he's speaking to people that, you know, that really do struggle. And maybe, you know, his story is going to be different, but there's a lot of people that can definitely relate to everything he's talking about. He's very relatable right now because people are feeling it, and couldn't have picked a better time.
Yeah, he definitely did. Boy, I'll tell you, you're informative. I didn't realize that. What's his real name again?
So his real name is Christopher Anthony Lunsford, and like I said, he started the singing songwriting, but I mean, I guess he's been doing it for a while, but nothing like where we got to here, where, you know, people are just not catching it. But it was already going on for a couple of weeks. Some of his songs got on iTunes. It's just only about 2 weeks ago this really all started.
Yeah. Oh, and I want to correct something. You know, when I spoke to you on the phone, I told you that the words are powerful, but I thought the instrumental wasn't that good. And I realized what I need to do a take back on that, because the clip I played at the top of the hour is the YouTube one that we know was officially put out, so to speak. The one I was referring to with you, I didn't realize it was a live performance somewhere at some, I don't know, like some chicken feed place or something. He was playing for a bunch of people, so it was, the sound quality was not good, and you know, he was fine, but that's the first one I heard, and I thought that was the one that everybody was making a big whoop-de-doo about. So when I said the instrumental didn't sound too good, I was wrong, because then when you listen to the one I just played, obviously it sounds good. George, can you hold? I need to take a break.
Sure.
But thanks for spending some time with us. We're talking with George Hermida, the king of podcasts. Follow him on Twitter, folks. Zeoli Army, you will not be disappointed, at King of Podcasts. And the website for all of his content is kingofpodcasts.com. We have Podcasters Row, Broadcasters Podcast. There's a lot going on there. We'll get to some of that a little later in our talk with George. But for now, we'll take a quick break. Welcome back to the Rich Zeoli Show. Lou Pate in for Rich, along with our special guest, the king of podcasts, George Hermida. Check him out at kingofpodcasts.com. There's a lot going on there. It's not just one podcast, folks. And, of course, follow him on Twitter, Zeoli Army, at King of Podcasts. The song Men North of Richmond, Christopher Lunsford. That's the song there, going by his grandfather's name. I just learned that on the show today, Oliver Anthony. George, I'm looking at an article in the New York Post. It says, who is Oliver Anthony? Unknown musician rockets to #1 with Blue Collar Anthem. And that was just posted a little earlier this afternoon. So, I mean, the mainstream media is starting to pick this up. Before it was just right-wing media and things like that, and sites, streaming sites online. But now you're talking, you know, New York Post and so on and so forth. So it's kind of big time. But he was already offered $8 million from a record company, and he turned it down, which personally I think is smart, because within the legalese of that agreement, he probably gives up the rights to the song. And in the music industry, $8 million is chump change. But do you have any insight on the deal or the $8 million or any more on why he turned it down? And are there any other offers on the table that we know of?
He hasn't given anyone. Nobody's been able to get any insight of that work. That it's just that he referenced $8 million off, and so there's been a couple of people, the major musicians, that wanted to be a part of this. So there's the country artist John Rich, big and rich, Lone Star fame. He was also looking to go ahead and had long talks with Oliver Anthony about having, produce and finance an album for him. They had talks, but nothing ever, metastasized. And the same thing action for the rapper Gucci Mane, who also wanted to sign a country artist to his new label. And he also tried to reach out and try to get in contact with Oliver Anthony. He made a point on Instagram to say, hey, I want to sign this guy. He was talking about the fact that he was trying to go, there were other people that were trying to offer deals, but they wanted to try to keep everything low key, wanted to go ahead and keep it, saying that everyone in the industry is rushing into signing something, but he wants to take things slow. And that's where he's at. Also, to go ahead and talk more about the background on Oliver Anthony, too. He was a high school dropout. He lived and worked in North Carolina, Virginia, and was in industrial manufacturing for the last 9 years. So he got to talk to a lot of people in factories because he was working alongside them and understand their plight. And he talked about the fact that people are so tired of being neglected, divided, and manipulated.
Well, neglected and having our money spent throughout the course of the show. We covered everything from China, Ukraine, Iran, the border, and possible COVID lockdowns. And, like you said, and I earlier in the show, I was talking about how at this point it's us against the government. So we all have to come together, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, Jew, Gentile. It doesn't matter, because I don't think the rich men north of Richmond care about us. And you're talking about rappers and all people from different backgrounds coming forward wanting to work with this guy. I mean, I think that almost is, it's a reflection of how people in society are feeling. So do we know who? He just said $8 million. He didn't say a record company. You said it wasn't like it was,
No, I mean, the way he put it out, he just said, made the point of $8 million offers, and that's all there really was about it. There was not much. So he talked about, that I don't want 6 tour buses, 15 tractor trailers in a jet. I don't want to play stadium shows. I don't want to be in the spotlight. And, he just turned down deals that were like, okay, well, didn't want anything to do with it. He also made mention of that. He says, quote, people in the music industry gave me blank stares when I brushed off $8 million offers. So he makes that point, but there's nothing else I could find about that gives more to what he was offering. So we don't know. But, I mean, I have no surprise if other the record labels or other people in the music business wanted to sign this guy to a record deal. No doubt about it.
I was just reading the thing. It said he did eventually get his GED. We got to give him credit there, but he is a high school dropout. Is he making any money? Is he making any money yet, aside from hits on YouTube?
Well, at the moment right now, he's talked about that. He can now afford to own a large farm. He has a property that he's trying to go and take care of, and he paid almost $100,000 for the property, but he still, as of 2019, he owed $60,000 on it. And he was most recently living in a 27-foot camper with a tarp on the roof, and he got off a Craigslist for $750. So whatever money he's going to make off of this eventually, it's something to make a living, I'm guessing. But obviously, if he's going to go perform, right now he's performing, and he's getting thousands of people to watch him perform live. And he has a lot of songs to play, which is the other part for him now. People are going to get to hear this whole library of music, already a full album, so he can play a full set wherever he wants. And people are going to at least catch him. So he'll have the tours, he'll have the music. People are going to have a chance. He's going to be able to make something kind of living. I don't know how much, because music these days, how hot can you stay hot?
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that we come into the holiday season, so everything kind of summer into the holiday season, and then you start the award season comes January, American Music Awards and all of that type of stuff. You think you can stay hot and start appearing at things like that? Country Music Awards, all that stuff passed already for this year.
Yeah, I think maybe they'll probably give like the Association of Country Music, the CMA Awards, the CMT Awards, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think country will probably embrace them because I think with what they did, I think this whole really the political kind of onus that's already on this now is going to probably fade, and people are just looking at him as just another talented country singer.
Oh, you don't think he'll be a one-hit wonder? You think he's here to stay?
And like I said, the Billboard music reviewers, they all think this guy's a future star. Country's going to take him in, and he'll be along the lines of Morgan Wallen and Jason Aldean and all those types.
All right. Well,
and Luke Combs, yeah.
We'll keep you posted on that. I want to segue here. I want to look at some of your podcasts. Last time you were on, you were talking about the writer's strike. They had come to the table at that point, but nothing had been successful. On August 18th, you put out the podcast, The Writer's Day Strike, Day 108, Actors Strike, Day 34. Studios now succumbing to strike deal with writers and directors. You said that it's the summer. People won't feel it until the fall. The fall is basically here. Labor Day is just a few weeks away. I haven't been following it. Where is the whole negotiation now? Has it moved forward?
I mean, it right now they're just continuing to do pretty much daily meetings to go ahead and continue to try to go ahead and work and negotiate. Nothing is coming yet. They're still everything's going along and saying, well, that at the moment they're just still waiting. The chief of the SAG-AFTRA negotiations, they had a solidarity rally outside of Disney Studios in California, and they basically said now it's been 40 days now the actors are on strike, and they're now asking for the leaders of the Hollywood studios and the streamers to come in and be in the deal. But right now they're just working through the Alliance of Motion Picture TV Producers. So they're the union for them, the agency for them is still working with the union, but they're asking for the studios, the head executives, to come into the meetings and let's get this done. So they're trying to work on that. They're right now, the negotiations, they're productive, but nothing has come in concrete yet.
And I think it's one of these things where they know they've got some time. Like you said, people are not going to feel it until the fall. So they're just going to take it to the 12th hour and then kind of 11th hour, whatever the expression is, and then kind of come to a deal last minute. What do you think?
I mean, they're still waiting, but also you have to remember the writers at the same time are on strike with the actors. They're going to wait for both of each other, for both sides, to have a deal in place and then sign. But there's too much to go and work on because from all the conversations been said, there's not been much leaked about it. Let's just say that. So people are very serious about getting this deal done. But nothing has really been concrete about streaming residuals where, the actors and the writers want to get paid, by the Netflixes and the Paramount Pluses of the world, not by what they say is, the subscribers that are subscribing to the service, but the viewers and how many viewers are actually watching the content. They want that. They also want to make sure that the writers that, when they have a project gets greenlit, that the writers, it's not going to just be one or two people that are going to write the whole series. They want to have a group of writers and make sure there's a certain amount of writers in the room that are going to be hired for a particular project. So they want that, and they want to make sure that AI is not an issue. They don't want to make sure that, that they're not going to, that the studios are not going to try to take scripts and try to recreate them with AI or take the actor's name, age, and likeness and use it in AI purposes and computer generate what they need for whatever production.
And I want to point out that on your site at kingofpodcast.com, that's under about the studio now succumbing to the strike deal with writers and actors where you question. It's on the Broadcasters podcast. It's funny because you're doing a live terrestrial, you do podcasts, you do like 4 or 5 of them. And, I break for commercials and, it's different when you're doing a podcast. So a lot of times I get up, I get something to eat. I, use the restroom. I'll get water. I'll get a cup of coffee, and you don't get to hear a lot of the spots or news reports or traffic reports, things of that nature. But I was sitting here before because I didn't get up, and I was, looking at my notes and thinking about what I was going to say. And it was funny. it caught my ear, and I even asked producer Henry about it. I was like, it's like Dax Shepard, who's married to Kristen Bell, was complaining that this writer's strike, he's afraid he's going to go broke because he's only got like 2 months, money saved for him to live. And I'm laughing to myself, not laughing that someone's going to go broke. I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, just him and his wife alone currently have like 3 national spots going for products that they're pitching. My girlfriend works in advertising. They're probably getting paid $5, $6 to $10 million for each ad. Am I really supposed to believe that this guy is going to almost be broke in 2 months? He's not an A-lister, but he's married to maybe a B-C lister. Either way, they're not making a lot of money in Hollywood anymore. He has a podcast as well, but they're making a ton of money pitching products, and he says he's only got 2 months worth of money. Am I really supposed to believe that?
I don't know. Listen, he's got $40 million. There's enough reports out there that say he's worth $40 million net worth right now. I don't know what he's saying. Now, maybe it's just a matter of maybe if he has things that are tied into other things, and you can't just put $40 million in the bank. You got to put in other things that are probably, whatever he's put into. Any regular money he's making right now, of course, he's got to pay agents. He's got to pay, the studios are going to take from that. I don't even know where he's got that kind of money. I don't think he was making that much off of anything. I mean, I know you got to remember
Kristen Bell. They do. I forget what it is. They do like. I think is it Sam's? They do Electrolux or something. They do Enterprise Rent-A-Cars. They do major products where they're endorsing them, and they do commercials as husband and wife. The biggest thing that bothers me about them is they think they're funny. And me, as someone who has done stand-up, it really annoys me. People who think they're funny and they're just not, and they're getting paid a lot of money to be not funny, yet they go home thinking they're actually comical. It's you know my old saying, George. I like my comedy to contain humor. So anyway,
well, it's hard to find. Let me tell you. But the other thing too is that with some of these comedies that are coming out in the movies. I just watched the movie Strays this past weekend, and look, Will Ferrell, Jamie Foxx, Isla Fisher, all voicing dogs didn't make any money. It bombed, and it's like it was fine. It was recently funny, but it's like. There's not much you can laugh at. And even in that movie, I had a pretty good amount of people in the crowd, but you know what? Nobody's really laughing that much.
Now, what was the name of this movie? Because I probably never heard of it, because if Will Ferrell is in it, I black it out because he's an affront to comedy, in my opinion. What's it called?
Oh, Strays. It's like Stray Dogs.
And is it it's a cartoon?
No, it's a live action, but it's like the dogs are being voiced by the actors. They're like, you can see the voices moving from the dogs.
That couldn't have come cheap. I mean, Will Ferrell, Jamie Foxx, these are A-listers, so they're not coming cheap. That cost a lot of money just in salaries alone, let alone post-production, lining it up with the dogs. Yeah, there was some. I mean, it was somewhat. I mean, there was that. I watched Blue Beetle, and they were trying to kind of push some jokes in there, trying to make it funny, but it's all this push trying to be funny, not naturally, organically funny. Something that just like you don't have a movie that just goes along and you just have constant laughter. Just like, okay, here's set up punchline. There's some of that, but it's like, did it put a lot of money? It was like a $50 million movie, the budget for Strays. Jeez.
But, I think it made, $9 million, $8 million this weekend. It's going to struggle to go ahead and make its money back.
Yeah, it's not. Hey, listen, before we go to break, I got a break in just a minute or so. We mentioned Taylor Swift last time, and you educated me a lot about her business savvy and how she, basically bought back her songs and was re-recording them. I saw online, and I don't know if it's true because, on the internet, you don't know what's true and what's not. Did the Soros family, were they part of buying up her catalog, or was that just one of those bad internet rumors? Do you know of anything about that? I haven't
seen anything about it. I couldn't tell you if there was anything about it. I just know that following Taylor Swift now, there's a report that she was going to be asked to go ahead and do the Super Bowl halftime show, but she's not doing it. There's not confirmation, but I know that for a fact that she can't do it because she's like on the leg of her tour. She'll be in Tokyo and Australia, and like for her to come back in time at the rehearsal and all that stuff would be difficult. I never heard anything about the Soros story.
Okay, because the right wing likes to make Soros into a boogeyman for everything. So I figured, I had a feeling it wasn't true. So we'll go with it that it's not true. She doesn't need the Super Bowl, George. You did a Swift's Triumphs, Industry and Trouble podcast on the Broadcasters Podcast. People should check that out. It's from a few weeks ago, but it's worth going back and looking. Again, kingofpodcast.com, at King of Podcasts on Twitter. She doesn't need the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl has been, I feel, the talent that they have been picking has been subpar. That's just my opinion, but then again, I'm a tough critic. But someone like, even if you liked the past few Super Bowl halftime shows, Taylor Swift doesn't need it. What do you think?
No, not at all. I mean, there's something to promote, but no, that she's gotten bigger than what she could do. It's like, well, because remember, like online virally, they're trying to say, like, some people want to try to say that she's compared her career level is at the level of Michael Jackson. I wouldn't say it's there yet, but for this generation, she's about as big as you can get. And I just think that she can command whatever she wants. She doesn't need the Super Bowl. And for that matter, it's like, she's fine. And if she did go out there, the other thing, too, I also heard, too, from people who were like, how many Swiftie fans who try to go to the Super Bowl and they can't go see her live? That would be pretty disheartening for some of those fans that want to see her, and they want to see her on TV. They want to be at that Super Bowl themselves. So they would probably take some tickets from the NFL fans.
I was at the Super Bowl at the Rose Bowl, Super Bowl 27, Cowboys and the Bills. This is before the halftime show became, the halftime show. Michael Jackson, there was only one act. It was Michael Jackson sang at the halftime show, and he did a good job because he's Michael Jackson. And it was, in his backyard in Southern California at the Rose Bowl. But halftime shows weren't really a big deal at that time. He came out, he was out there for, 15, 20 minutes or whatever, maybe even a half hour, and he did his thing. He did all of his moves. And I have to say, I was kind of half watching it because I was sitting next to a Los Angeles Laker cheerleader who was this hot blonde, and she kind of had my attention. But to compare Taylor Swift to Michael Jackson, it's kind of unfair to both artists because Michael Jackson a stellar talent, but it's a different time now. Like Michael Jackson, when Thriller came out, was it 83 or 84? People were still buying vinyl. I mean, the world itself and the world of music especially, and how music is purchased, how it's consumed, has changed in ways that Michael Jackson, may he rest in peace, he died June 25th, 2009, I'll never forget. The world has changed since 2009. He couldn't even imagine the way music is being sold now, and it's only 14 years after his death. So it's kind of unfair to both artists to compare them because it can't be compared because it's in the realm of time, it's apples and oranges. What do you think?
We can actually argue this after the world tour ends because that's what Michael Jackson really had the bread and butter. For the fact of the large world following that he had around the world wherever he went, and it was like this mania that was going on for him. Wherever you saw him perform, people were just clamoring to go see him. Millions upon millions of people wanted to go and catch that. You know what?
True.
Taylor Swift has more of a career like Elvis, to be honest with you, because you know what? She has the scumbaggery of like management that comes onto her. So with Tom Parker for Elvis Presley, she had Scooter Braun, and I don't know if you have the story right now, but as we speak today, Scooter Braun, he's represented not just Justin Bieber and Taylor Swift, but right now the story is Ariana Grande and Demi Lovato, two major pop stars. They're no longer being represented by Scooter Braun, and there's more people. Justin Bieber right now is also rumored to be leaving Scooter Braun. So like.
Are you comparing him to Colonel Tom Parker?
Oh, absolutely. He's going to get canceled right now. The stories are coming across the board. And, he also represents Carly Rae Jepsen, Post Malone, the Black Eyed Peas.
George, you've got a new feature that you just started recently called Podcasters Row. What is that exactly? Explain.
So I created a new podcast. I've been on doing podcasting since 2005. And to start my 19th year of doing podcasting, I always thought about doing this, but I wanted to go and talk to other podcasters. I don't get invited to, conferences like Podcasters Movement, which is one of the major ones that's going on right now. I don't get ever offered to go to those events. They never ask me to speak at these events, but I want to talk to other podcasters and learn how they got into the craft.
I find the podcast world to be very cliquey. Do you find that?
Well, like the radio world, very much so. But yeah,
well
it's one of those things where, it's okay. I don't mind. I don't need the ingratiation of other people out there, but I like the offer of saying, you know what, let's promote what they're doing, what kind of podcasts they're doing, and I want to talk to them about, what they're normally talking about their shows, but also go into a conversation of what they think about themselves. Give them a chance to be a host to find out like what's on their mind and what makes them, the podcast as they are, what topics and what subjects are more passionate to them and why they're doing what they're doing.
So it's a great concept because you're talking to podcasters, and people who listen to podcasts are also people who listen to radio. The two can peacefully coexist. They like to hear more about the people, the person behind the host rather than just the topics that they present. And a lot of times, I don't think hosts realize that's lost, where they don't let their personality and their private life shine. They're just doing the topics or the music or whatever it is they're doing. So you're giving them a chance for people to hear who the actual people are behind the hosts. I like that.
I'll tell you this. There was an episode I did last week. I already posted it up this week. And her name is Denise Warner Gregory. So she's a comedian, but also been a podcaster for as long as I have. So only months after I got into the business of podcasting, I got to produce with her the very first podcast that she did, and she's been on it ever since. One of the amazing stories that's out there is that she actually met a listener that was listening to her when the shows were live streamed, and years later they got married.
Really?
Now
that's a nice
the show
story.
Is targeted. So the show's targeted towards gays and lesbians, LGBTQ plus. But the thing was that so she met another woman and they hit it off, and there was a point where Denise decided to go across the world to Australia, and she's in South Florida, and decided to start making the trip. And it was one of these long distance relationships. And eventually they got together and got married. But
South Florida to Australia, that's the longest long distance relationship I've ever heard of.
Absolutely. And she does a podcast now called The Rainbow Remix, but she's in England now where she lives with her wife, and her co-host is in South Florida. So it's this whole thing of the way they connect together on podcasting. She was able to go meet the love of her life, make a great career out of what she's been doing because she's been helping the LGBTQ plus community for a long time. But it's been good for her. But it's the story I got to talk with her is because I got to work on her first show. I'm one of those little people, don't forget about the little people when you get to go big. And she's done an amazing job with a career with it. And that was a great story to talk about.
17, 19 years ago was the first show, was it, give or take?
2006 I did with her, and it was a completely different show. We would never do the show that we did then now, but there was so much we learned from it. And, we had the momentum because we were all interested in doing this so early on and just working our way over. And I followed her career. I think she's done a great job with what she's done.
And the show, the Rainbow Remix, it's successful. She gets a lot of downloads, and
it was pretty good. It's still a relatively new show because she had another show she did for a long time, but the show ended because her co-host for a number of years, who I got to work with, she just got a new job, and it was just this real good career move for her. So she stepped away from podcasting altogether because she had to focus on this new career field.
Hey, George, we got to leave it there. But George Hermida, thank you again. We didn't even get to the wrestling. Your 10 years of podcast excellence. Check them out, folks. You will not be disappointed. We'll save that for next time. At King of Podcasts, George Hermida. At King of Podcasts on Twitter and kingofpodcasts.com. George, thank you again for your time. You are a wealth of information. Take care. We'll talk with you soon.
All the best.
Same to you. Thank you.